I want to turn and talk about, I mentioned at the start of the show, I wanted to kind of hit on the many-faceted Marxist attacks on America. You know, I use the term Marxist, and I'm aware that some people say, well, this isn't really Marxism because, you know, they're not trying to take over the means of production. They're not, you know, it's not the ownership of the means of production, blah, blah. You need to understand what the left is doing to America. And I mentioned the entire battle plan thought. Violent rioters in the streets threatening people. That's one piece of it, where you have people in cities around this country cowering in their homes or selling their homes and leaving, abandoning their businesses, just trying to get away from these crazies. And what they have achieved then in doing that, in rioting and destroying and behaving like mobs and thugs, you've achieved control because civilized society has surrendered to you. This is part of what the radical left wants. They want America to just surrender and say, okay, you know, what more do you want? What more can we do for you? And we have to recognize we cannot do that, but cannot surrender. But all this violence and many, many other ways in which this Marxist attack on the very identity of America is being carried out right before our eyes. And again, instead of just responding to this particular battle, we have to have a response that is whole America, the identity of America, standing up for self and fighting back. But I want to run through some of the ways that the Marxist attack on America is being carried out. One has to do with education. And if you listen to my show at all, you recognize that over the last decades, you've had the communist infiltration of this country beginning in the 1920s, but coming forth to today, communist infiltration of anti-American, anti-freedom, anti-capitalist, pro-socialist, pro-Marxist, pro-communist mindset penetrating America's academic, I tell you, folks, from kindergarten to grad school, you've had it penetrate. So you have kids today leaving high school, leaving college, hating America, thinking all of America's founders were racist and xenophobic and all the other crazy things that they accuse them of. You have the America's founding recharacterized by the 1619 Project. So you actually think America is an evil country. You have kids leaving high school and college, no clue about the beauty, the extraordinary greatness of the ideas of the founding of America, because all they've been taught is the 1619 Project, and America is a deeply racist country, and we are just permeated with systemic racism. This is what kids already think. But in Chicago, there was a press conference called by a series of Chicago leaders. These are teachers, they're in education, politics, and other arenas. They gathered to make a demand to the Illinois State Board of Education that it change the history curriculum in that state, change the history curriculum, and for a time until the new curriculum approved by these radical leftists gets put in place, that no history will be taught in the state. This is their idea. They want to have the Illinois State Board of Education order teachers, public school teachers, to not teach history until these radical leftists can impose their radical anti-American ideas as the core curriculum of what kids are taught in America. Kids are already taught to hate America. They're already taught that America is a racist and bad country, and that we have a bad history, and that we're filled with systemic racism. These clowns, it's not even enough for them. So you have these leaders in Chicago making this demand. I want to contrast that with the reality that kids already, we've had our curriculum just poisoned by anti-American leftism already in this country. We have parents in states around the country trying to have a say in their public school curriculum, say, hey, wait a minute, why are we teaching, half a day on George Washington and describing him as an evil, selfish, imperialist slave owner? Why is that the only thing? And then we have, weeks on end, a social justice warrior curricula. You already have parents trying to correct that. And these people in Chicago are saying it's not even good enough yet. In fact, their argument is in Chicago that the reason that we have so much racial tension in our country is because the way history is taught, we have too many students who don't understand anything about other cultures, other religions, other races, other ethnicities, that we don't ever teach anything about the history of other groups. So therefore, we don't understand each other. Therefore, we have all this racism. This is so Orwellian that it's beyond Orwellian. The left has orchestrated the hate of America. The left has worked vigilantly, tirelessly to divide America by race. They have consciously, intentionally indulged in, encouraged the concept of identity politics. So people think their very identity in America's political culture is whatever skin color they happen to be or ethnicity, rather than the ideas of America. But even all of the anti-Americanism they've already infested our school system with was not enough. These folks want to have entire history curriculum put aside, and instead no history taught until they can come up with history they say meets their standards of adequately representing the history of all sorts of people in this country, of people of different race and ethnicity. Contrast that with, there was a great article, and I shared it on our website, and our website is americacanwetalk.org. And I said that slowly because I've gotten some emails from people saying, you say the name of your website too quickly, I can't catch it. americacanwetalk.org. On that website, on the homepage, under shows at the homepage, drop down lists of links. You can read this article, great Federalist article. The writer is just basically writing about having interviewed a fourth grade teacher, and that fourth grade teacher describing to her how her ability to teach truth, to teach children about the truth of America, the identity of America, the history of America, not whitewashing and making it perfect, but the reality. But her ability to teach history, math, science, language arts has been completely taken over by the left-wing agenda. They now use the term an integrated curriculum. And she points out, integrated curricula means that everything the kids learn is all kind of connected with each other. All of it, she points out, is to push the progressive, leftist, anti-American worldview. So this is already, the school teachers are saying, you know, we aren't really teaching kids what America is. And the left is not even, they're still not satisfied with how much they have driven out of American society the basic concept of love of America, love of patriotic love of this precious country. And so just contrast that, the reality already being taught in schools versus what these Chicago teachers are trying to do. This is one battlefront of the anti-American Marxist left, which is to so contort education that no kid possibly leaves school understanding anything about the greatness of America. They don't even know. They don't know because all they've been gotten in public school is left-wing indoctrination. Another battlefront the left is onto, and it's just really taking major headway, has to do with the destruction of religion and the idea of religion being taught in our country and the importance of a place of religion. And again, if you do not think that this radical Black Lives Matter Marxist organization, Antifa organization, which is communist and anti-American, dedicated to destroying America, if you don't think that they are Marxists, if you still think somehow this probably relates to George Floyd's most unfortunate death in Minneapolis, please listen to this. In Portland now, these anti-American Marxist protesters are now burning Bibles. Burning Bibles. Remind me what that has to do with George Floyd, who I believe his family said was Christian. So again, understand, we're watching the unfolding of a Marxist attack on America. This is another battlefront. This is just one example of how Marxist the protests are, that they have burned Bibles. But this particular aspect of attacking America and our religious basis of America, the Judeo-Christian ideas of America, has been happening in our courts for decades, where you have the Americans United because we hate religion and all sorts of organizations like that. That's not their real name, but it's like what should be their name. They spend their time litigating and arguing over whether city councils can open a meeting with a prayer. So you have the attack on the religion, the religious founding of America, another Marxist accomplishment they must make. They must make destroying religion a front and center issue because it allows them to push their Marxist ideas. Another battlefront this Marxist attack on America includes is the whole idea of attacking our history. So we attack our history through our schools, as we were talking about a moment ago, but during these protest marches, they've been taking down and desecrating statues of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Christopher Columbus. I mean, just anyone in American history that kids used to learn about their role in our history with their contributions. You didn't have to learn these people were perfect. You could have added things to point out that we've now discovered certain things about them that weren't perfect. But the left's idea is simply to destroy the very understanding of American history. So latest little example, which is just, I mean, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a gift that keeps on giving, she recently made statements attacking as a white supremacist incident, an example of white supremacy, that a priest, a Roman Catholic priest named Saint Damien of Molokai, there was a statue for him. She attacked him because he was a colonizer. This was her word. He was a colonizer. To understand this guy, this priest, he was a Catholic priest who worked specifically trying to help people living in leper communities when leprosy was rampant. And leprosy is very contagious. And that's why when people came down with leprosy, they got sent out of society, off to live in leper colonies, often insufficient food, housing, care. And they were literally outcasts. I mean, the expression of an outcast or being like a leper is still used today to symbolize it. So this priest decided you can't treat people like that. So he actually went into these leper colonies, helped them, brought education, helped them understand with housing, helped them, I mean, literally tried to help them have a somewhat normal life. He contracted leprosy through that contact. He died of leprosy at a young age. This guy memorialized for his goodness. AOC calls another example of white supremacy and colonizing of America. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But again, understand, she is a trained Marxist. AOC is not just a daffy airhead. She's a trained Marxist. She understands the point of what she's doing is to make sure that Americans hate their history. Americans hate their history. Another example that is just an amazing, you can hardly believe we're watching these things unfold in this country. But the idea, even 1 year ago, if someone told you in America, we're going to have a movement to defund the police, you would say, well, that'd be the craziest thing ever. I hope the Democrats do take that mission, because that will really assure Republicans will win. We have come in 1 year from the place that was a radical, kooky idea that even Bernie Sanders wouldn't push, defund the police, to an idea which is now very commonplace and being discussed in cities around this country. In New York City, massive increase in violent crime because they have been giving voice to, and understand, they haven't even done it yet. They're just talking about it. They voted on it. They're going to defund the police, not entirely, but very significantly. They've already had a rise in crime because why wouldn't the criminals commit more crimes? They can see there's no police around here. There aren't going to be police. We're going to have fewer and fewer people in charge. What the heck? I'm going to go ahead and do my violent thing. But in Minneapolis, where it's come to a head, Minneapolis also one of the cities that had a decision to defund the police. In Minneapolis, they've now had advice given out in the 3rd precinct area of Minneapolis. So this is the city of Minneapolis. If you listen to my show all the time, I have great fondness for Minneapolis. I went there growing up every single summer of my life. Dozens of cousins there, aunts, uncles, and this is gone to ruin. So in Minneapolis, in the 3rd precinct, the police put out a warning to citizens, instruction to citizens, which basically said, if someone accosts you and they try to attack you and they try to take your purse or your wallet, just give it to them. Just give it to them. Just surrender. Don't expect police support. Don't expect someone to come and help you. Don't expect any follow-up by the police, because the police are being vanquished from the city of Minneapolis. So all these people lived their lives in Minneapolis, their lifetime, many times for generations of people in Minneapolis. They have worked hard. They have gone to their jobs every day. They pay their taxes, which are supposed to support civil society. And the answer to those people of the police department, the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis, is just give the criminal, give them what they want, whatever they want. They want your wallet, your purse, just give it to them. And they added, do as the criminals say, do as they say. This is not just it is crazy, but it's also another example of what I'm talking about. The anti-American Marxist left attack on this country includes the idea of getting rid of police. Because if you get rid of police, you have chaos, you have fear rampant, you have destruction rampant. You have people so frightened that they will put up with anything the government says. A frightened people, a people recognizing they have no more control over their lives, the police are never going to help them, are going to eventually put up with a more Marxist government-controlled society just to get order back. There is always a method in the madness of the left in America. Always a method, always a mission. It is not because they really, truly, deeply think somehow America will be safer and more peaceful and more, harmonious if we just get rid of police. They know perfectly well what will happen. Bedlam will rule. Chaos, violence will rule, and people will then say, fine, whatever it is I got to do, go ahead, I'll sign me up. I want the violence to end. I'll do whatever these crazy leftists are telling me to do. Last point I want to hit in this whole many fronts of the battle the anti-American Marxist left is engaged in, a whole other front has to do with their control over our culture. And in specifically, it's two facets that are the anti-American Marxist left in this next story. One is they are determined to convince every American that you must figure out what racial and ethnic silo you belong to, and that is your whole identity. Your identity is African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, whatever it is, your whole identity must be that. And they succeed in that by the constant politics of identity, the hyphenated groups. Everybody gets assigned to those, and this helps the left's destruction of America. Because if your main sense of your identity is that you are a Caucasian American, a Hispanic American, Asian American, African American, if that's your whole identity, then you are not going to have a sense of identity tied to the founding of America. You're not going to have the identity that says, I'm an American. I believe that we all have rights from our Creator simply because we were born. I believe all men are created equal, that we all have rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You're not going to pursue your sense of identity, your sense of rights from that. You're going to simply sink into an ugly silo identified by and defined by a factor you didn't create because the left told you that's where you live. But once they've accomplished that, the second they can do then is control language, and they have yet another basis to divide America, to make you hate each other, divide each other. And one thing the left has been doing, and this gets around the story I want to tell you, it's the most interesting story, but I wanted to get that background for it, that kind of foundation for it, before I share the story. So there's a young woman, she's 21 or something like that, 22 years old. Her name is Morgan Bullock. She's a Black American young woman, and she's from, I think, Virginia. And she, at a young age, went to some performance and saw Irish dancing. Irish dancing you see in movies where there really aren't a lot of hand gestures. It's all your feet and all the fancy moves. She thought it was the coolest thing she ever saw in her entire life. This girl's name is Morgan Bullock, and she decided, she was so interested, started taking classes in Irish dancing. Recently, she posted a video of herself on TikTok, because she's become quite the accomplished dancer, Irish dancer. She is just doing the unique style of Irish dancing. And so now I want to play. So what happened was she did this video of herself, and she put it up on TikTok. She's very accomplished. I mean, the video, you should listen to the whole thing, but the little portions I picked out, I'll show you in a moment. But this is what happened to her, because she happens to be Black, and she happens to be really, really in love with, and very fond of, Irish dancing. Here you have Morgan Bullock.
People saying that I shouldn't be Irish dancing because I'm Black and I don't look like most Irish dancers. But I saw it for the first time at a recital, and it was just the coolest thing ever to me.
When you think of Irish dancing, this probably isn't what comes to mind. This is 21-year-old Morgan Bullock. an Irish dancer from Richmond, Virginia, who recently went viral for her dancing on TikTok.
Part of my life.
She started going to classes a few times a week and attended dance competitions. And Morgan, when you went into those Irish dancing classes, were you the only African-American girl in the class?
Yeah, I was always the only one in my class.
Did that ever have any effect on you, or how did that make you feel?
I mean, obviously it's hard to miss someone who's actually, their face matches their legs at the competitions, because you know, there's like the tanner, you like...
There's a lot of tan.
Yeah, a lot of tanner, but it's hard to miss someone who's African American. I don't think I ever considered it an issue. It was definitely something that I took note of, but I had grown up in a predominantly white area, so it wasn't something that I was uncomfortable about.
After going viral with her Irish dancing, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive, but there were a few who thought that what she was doing was inappropriate. The negative comments that people were leaving under the video, what were people saying?
Just early on, like shortly after posting it, some people were saying that what I was doing was cultural appropriation, just because I don't look like what you would typically picture an Irish dancer to look like. But, I mean...
So were they saying because you weren't Irish and because you were not white that you shouldn't be performing Irish dancing?
Yeah, basically that's what they were saying.
You were misappropriating the Irish dancing culture.
I mean, my understanding of the term is that it means when you're taking something from another culture, claiming it as your own without recognizing where it comes from, and that's couldn't be further from what I'm doing.
Okay, I love that girl. I love what she's saying, and I wanted to expand her point she was making there, which is cultural appropriation versus appreciation. The story is interesting because she thinks for herself. She saw this Irish dancing at age 10, thought, I'm going to do that. I can do that. And she's very, very good at it. There was a lengthy interview. One point made was that she was interviewed somewhere, and she was just invited to join the Irish river dancing, which I guess is like the coolest thing ever. I don't really know about it, but the point is she was thrilled and tickled to pieces. But I want to make this point about people making the comments about her. The expression cultural appropriation has become another trendy left-wing Marxist tactic to try to force upon people, to inflict people with leftist thinking that says, you are assigned a certain race and ethnicity, and when you're assigned to that, certain qualities go with that, certain characteristics go with that, and you own that. So somebody else who happens to be a different background, they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to like that, and you can accuse them of cultural appropriation. And I have to tell you, I remember stories you talked about in the show from colleges where there was I think it was like Italian night at some school. Or I don't know what it was, but the point was some college that tried to have ethnic nights in the dining hall. They said, tonight we're having Italian night, or whatever the foods were that they were having. And there was a group of students who attacked the university, and they demanded a hearing and a fairness thing. And they had to go through the snowflake assessment of why I'm so offended because, you served this food, but you didn't make it right. We had Asian night, but it wasn't you didn't do the right thing. And I felt insulted. The left has succeeded in destroying harmony, culture, and connection in our society by trying to embed in people the idea that your identity is the race or ethnicity you happen to be born. No one in the entire planet Earth chose their race or ethnicity. No one chose it. It is whatever you're born is what you are. This is where, this is life. But the left has managed to push this idea so far that there is relentless, endless assessment and discussion and dialogue and hurt feelings and who's offended more, and I'm offended, but he's offended even more over cultural appropriation. Her very polite answer was, well, what if it's just cultural appreciation? Because she's not trying to pretend she's Irish. She's not trying to pretend she made up Irish dancing, not trying to pretend it's her, thing that she invented. She just likes it and she's good at it. She's apparently very, very, very good at it. And so she's succeeding and she's having fun and she's enjoying her life and she's not living in the silo the left tries to assign to her. So number one, I love this story. This young girl, Morgan Bullock, is just pursuing what she likes. I love that. But I also love that she gave a great little line about it's not cultural appropriation. Well, can't I just be appreciating it? But I think the larger and deeper political point, this is another method, another way the anti-American Marxist left works to dissolve the cultural, societal fabric of America, to try to tell people, because you have this background, you can't like this, you can't do this, you must like this. And everyone's supposed to nod along and go, okay, I guess because I'm this, I'm not allowed to do that. And it is so antithetical to the American spirit. And it is not just an innocent or coincidental development in America. The cultural appropriation has become such a significant conversation on university campuses around this country. It is a tactic to make us feel divided, a tactic to make us feel assigned to our ethnicity, and therefore make us feel disconnected from our identity as Americans.